Dear friends and listener, viewer, today I would like to introduce to you a very famous novel of Frankenstein written by Mary Shelley. The famous Mary Shelley, who was the wife of P.B. Shelley, Percy Bysshe Shelley, Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley was born in 1797, the only daughter of William Godwin, and she died in 1851. So before starting this novel, the name of this novel is Frankenstein or Modern Prometheus. I would like to read a few lines from the famous poet John Milton. Did I request thy maker from my clay to mold me man? Did I solicit thee from darkness to promote me? Paradise Lost, written by John Milton. So the story of this novel starts with a series of few letters written by Robert Walton, the captain of ship bound for the North Pole, recounts to his sister back in England the progress of his dangerous mission. Successful early on, the mission is soon interrupted by seas full of impassable ice. Trapped, Walton encounters Victor Frankenstein, who has been traveling by dogs drawn sledge across the ice and is weakened by the cold. Walton takes him aboard ship, helps nurse him back to health, and hears the fantastic tale of the monster that Frankenstein created. Victor first described the early life in Geneva at the end of a blissful childhood spent in the company of Elizabeth Lavinza, his cousin, and friend Henry Clerval. Victor enters the University of Ingolstadt to study natural philosophy and chemistry. There he is consumed by the desire to discover the secret of life, and after several years of research becomes convinced that he has found it. Armed with knowledge he has long been seeking, Victor spent monthly feverishly fashioning a creature out of old body parts. One climatic night, in the secrecy of his apartment, he brings his creation to life. When he looks at the monstrosity that he has created, however, the sight horrifies him. After a fitful night of sleep, interrupted by the spectre of the monster looming over him, he runs into the street, eventually wandering in remorse. Victor runs into Henry, who has come to study at the university, and he takes his friend back to his apartment. Though the monster is gone, Victor falls into a feverish illness. Sickened by his horrific deed, Victor prepares to return to Geneva, to his family and to health just before departing Ingolstadt. However, he receives a letter from his father informing him that his youngest brother William has been murdered. Grief-stricken, Victor hurries home. While passing through the woods where William was strangled, he catches sight of the monster and becomes convinced that monster in his brother is the murderer of his brother. He catches sight of the monster. Arriving in Geneva, Victor finds that Justine Moritz, a kind, gentle girl who had been adopted by Frankenstein's household, has been accused. She is tried, condemned, and executed. Despite her assertion of innocence, Victor grows despondent, guilty with the knowledge that the monster he has created bears responsibility for the death of two innocent loved ones. Hoping to ease his grief, Victor takes a vacation to the mountains while he's alone one day, crossing an enormous glacier. The monster approaches him. The monster admits to the murder of William, but begs for understanding. Lonely, shunned, and forlorn, he says that he struck out at William in a desperate attempt to injure Victor. His cruel creator, the monster, begs Victor to create a mat for him, a monster equally grotesque to serve as his sole companion. Victor refuses at first, horrified by the prospect of creating a second monster. The monster is eloquent and persuasive, however, and he eventually convinces Victor. After returning to Geneva, Victor heads for England, accompanied by Henry, to gather information for the creation of female monster. Leaving Henry in Scotland, he secludes himself on a desolate island in the Orkneys and works reluctantly, repeating his first success. One night, struck by doubts and about the morality of his action, Victor glances out to the window to see the monster glaring in at him with a frightened grin. Horrified by the possible consequences of his work, Victor destroys new creation, the monster's enraged, vows revenge, swearing that he will be with Victor on Victor's wedding night. So what happened later that night? Victor takes a boat out of the lake and dumps the remains of second creature in the water. The wind picks up and prevents him from returning to the island. In the morning, he finds himself ashore near an unknown town. Upon landing, he is arrested and informed that he will be tried for murder discovered the previous night. Victor denies any knowledge of the murder, but when shown the body, he is shocked to behold his friend Henry Clerval with a mark of monster's finger on his neck. Victor falls ill, raving and feverish, and is kept in prison until his recovery, after which he is acquitted of the crime. Shortly after returning to Geneva with his father, Victor marries Elizabeth. He fears the monster's warning and suspects that he will be murdered on wedding night. To be cautious, he sends Elizabeth away to wait for him. While he waits the monster, he hears Elizabeth scream and realizes that the monster had been hinting at killing his new bride. Not himself, Victor returns home to his father who dies of grief. A short time later, Victor vows to devote the rest of his life to finding the monster and exacting his revenge, and he soon departs to begin his quest. Victor tracks the monster ever northward into the ice. In a dog sled chase, Victor almost catches up with the monster, but the sea beneath them swells and the ice breaks, leaving an unbridgeable gap between them. At this point, Walton encounters Victor, and the narrative catches up to the time of Walton's fourth letter of his sister. To his sister, Walton tells the remainder of the story in another series of letters to his sister. Victor, already ill when the two men meet, worsens and dies shortly thereafter. When Walton returns several days later to the room in which the body lies, he is startled to see the monster weeping over Victor. The monster tells Walton of his immense solitude, suffering, hatred, and remorse. He asserts that now that his creator has died, he too can end his suffering. The monster then departs from the northmost ice to die. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us see how many characters involved in this novel. So the first hero of this novel is Victor Frankenstein, the protagonist of this novel. And character list of Victor Frankenstein. the doomed protagonist and the narrator of main portion of the story. Studying in Ingolstadt, Victor discovers the secret of life and creates an intelligent but grotesque monster from whom he recoils in horror. Victor keeps his creation of the monster a secret, feeling increasingly guilty and ashamed as he realizes how helpless he is to prevent the monster from ruining his life and the lives of others. The other character is the monster himself, the 8-foot-tall, hideously ugly creature, Victor Frankenstein, intelligent, eloquent, and sensitive. The monster attempts to integrate himself with human social pattern, but all who sees him shun him. Robert Walton, the Arctic seafarer who letters open and close Frankenstein. Walton picks the bedraggled Victor Frankenstein up off the ice, help nurse him back to health. Here's Victor's story. He records the incredible tale of series of letters addressed to his sister Margaret Savile in England. Elizabeth Levina, an orphan 4 or 5 years younger than Victor, whom the Frankenstein adopt in 1818 edition of this novel. Elizabeth is Victor's cousin. Henry Carvel, Victor's boyhood friend, who nurses Victor back to health in Ingolstadt after working unhappily for his father. Henry begins to follow in Victor's footsteps as scientist. His cheerfulness. Alphonse Frankenstein, Victor's father, is sympathetic toward his son. William Frankenstein, Victor's youngest brother and darling of Frankenstein family. The monster strangles William in the wood outside Geneva in order to hurt Victor, to abandon him. Justin Moritz, a young girl adopted by the Frankenstein household while Victor is growing up. Justin is blamed and executed for William murder. Beaufort, Peasant, and Mr. Waldman, Mr. Krimpy, Mr. Kirman. These are the characters involved in this novel. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the story of Victor Frankenstein, who created the monster, but later on who run out from his control. And this, when you will read this book, especially the tale of the monster itself, you will come to know that how monster was striving for his identity, how he is in search of his own parent, of his own creator. So this is a very interesting and horrifying tale. I hope you will enjoy. Thank you.